So the Save the Mountain group was set up in 2021, and that was as a result of us hearing about. Can you hear me? Yeah. It's a bit funny with this because I don't hear the magnification. So we heard about a proposal for a giant wind farm going up on Dua Mountain. And for those of you who aren't familiar, it's 5 kilometres northeast of Manorhamilton. It's a National Heritage Area, and the plan is to put 18 turbines on the mountain at a height of 185 metres each. So in the old money, that's 600 feet. And just to put it sort of into perspective for people, much, much higher than the Dublin Spire. So just imagine 18 of those on your doorstep. So we in Save the Mountain group have a lot of concerns. But whatever I'm saying here covers any group or any resident who is fearful of having a wind farm beside them. And I know there are people here from Windaware, Dromahair and maybe other groups. So this is a voice for all of us. So I would love to list all the concerns, but we'd make polling day if I did that. So I've promised Madeleine I'm sticking to me 3 minutes. So the concerns are biodiversity on a sensitive landscape. One thing that hasn't been mentioned here tonight is the biodiversity crisis that we're in. And we're losing thousands of species a year, and we really, really need to be mindful of that because there's no coming back from it. The other thing that Dua Mountain is basically shale rock with bog on it. Leitrim is not getting any drier. So we're very prone to landslides in this area, as people know what has happened sort of further south in the county over the last few years. So without any development happening, we're having landslides. So if we're doing huge industrial scale development on that mountain, it is going to cause landslides. And planning has already been refused on that mountain because of its liability and susceptibility to landslides. Also bear in mind, this is upland bog, which is one of the best carbon sinks that we have. So just to add insult to injury, the company who wants to develop this is called Future Energy, which is a joint venture with Creelcha and the ESB, 2 semi-state organisations using our taxpayers' money. So they want to now cut down the trees, monoculture trees, which have been planted on the bog, cut them down and then put in billions of cubic metres of concrete. We're not sticking our heads in the sand, or the bog for that matter, in Save the Mountain. We have to move away from fossil fuels. I'm a member, I'm actually the treasurer of Love Leitrim. We're never without a campaign in North Leitrim. And you know, we did this because we know we need to move away from fossil fuels, but this race for renewables is decimating our landscape here in Leitrim and in a lot of rural Ireland. Martin, I think, and maybe Paddy referred to the outdated guidelines. The guidelines go back for wind farm development to 2006, 2007, when a big turbine was 80 metres. Now a lot of the turbines that are being applied for are 200 metres high. So the setback from houses bears no relevance nowadays. Excuse me. In a survey done by Good Energies Alliance Ireland in 2019, Leitrim produces 64% of its energy from wind. We're already doing that. 22% of the country's energy goes to data centres. Speaks for itself. We in Save the Mountain group support alternative energy and sustainable energy. A lot of us are members of the local community energy group. What we're looking for is a just transition here. We want the transition, but we want it to be just. For me, I feel that a lot of this is driven by grant. It's grant harvesting, not wind harvesting, that these companies are about profit and nothing else. They don't for the most part, care about the environment or care about communities. We're having these wind farms imposed on us in our communities, and they are displacing the sustainable industries that we should be working on and should be developing. My background is tourism, and I'm very conscious of the Fáilte Ireland statistics that 70% of visitors to Ireland come here for our unspoiled landscape. That is, Madeleine, did I stick to the time?
Okay, I'm going to open it to the floor for any comments, and I acknowledge that, you're addressing biodiversity as well in this, Nuala. It's like biodiversity is something in some of foreign land, and it isn't the butterflies or the moths, in our local area. And a bit like the bees, we thought, sure, they're a nuisance until we realised that they were crucial. So every form of life on the planet is important. It's in the weave. So, yes?
The first point I'd like to make, and with the greatest respect to you, Glaheen, is that these turbines are of enormous scale. And they're not windmills. They don't mill anything. They are turbines, and they're industrial. That's the main thing.
Thank you. Yeah, three.
Just a comment, they're not sustainable. They don't get burnt every year.
Sorry, they're not sustainable?
No, they don't get burnt every year. They cost an awful lot to maintain. I actually do a bird survey on a mountain that has been for the last 20 years, even on a bike on Sunday. They have to be serviced, but they're also seriously damaging to the environment, particularly the uplands, because they bring in pest species. It's where our ground nesting birds are, like red grouse, right? And what they do is, because I see the rubbish that these service engineers leave behind, the litter and the food, which brings in predators on the ground, it brings in foxes. It'll bring in, once you bring a track into a heathland habitat, a vast area, but a fox would not go in there because it wouldn't find anything. It's like you going out in the middle of the ocean looking for a fish. You wouldn't find one. But once you put the tracks in, I use that as a hunting track, and I do little sorties of it. And the same applies for corvids. You're bringing in all of the pest species that would never be there. So you're actually really damaging an Annex 1 habitat.
So you're a huge impact on the environment. Person over there?
My name is Joe Sheeran from Hiltic Tower, and I'm constantly fed up of hearing all of your parties who are in favour of wind energy using the formula carbon neutral. There is no, that is not correct, because when you build a wind farm on a bog, straight away the bog actually is a carbon bank, and from the moment you start doing anything with that site, you are starting to drain it, and that's draining off and releasing the carbon. When you build put in the foundation for the wind farm, that already is removal of the turf, and that's also draining the site. And what's doing is that Doom Mountain is, the top of Doom is a plateau. Bog is made up of 90% water, so basically Doom Mountain is a lake on top of a mountain of rock. And there's a scoping report done already in relation to it. That scoping report says that the bog that's at top follows down to the bog at the centre and then is part of the foundation where the wind farms are going to be built.
So what we're hearing is this is industrial scale infrastructure. It has immediate and long-term effect on the biodiversity, and it has immediate and long-term effect on the drainage and therefore the biodiversity and the characteristics of the systems that are in place there. I have another question.
Sorry, I just had one question. Your thoughts on on degrowth, potentially using less. The solutions to use less instead of just more renewable energy on its own. That's what it is.
So that comment was, just in case you didn't hear it, instead of going for more and more and more and more, have you considered degrowth as part of your policies? Is that in your manifesto? Was there another question up or comment up there? No?
Gentleman in front here, from the Observer.
Sorry, this gentleman. I'll come back to you.
No, just to kind of follow that point, and also something that's been referred to a few times, where the energy is being used. So you're talking about like large commercial industry, technological industry. If you're elected and you're going to be TDs, you're going to find yourselves in a position probably where you're going to be approached by lobbies. And there are very powerful, very interested parties who know how to talk to politicians, and who know how to approach you, and who know how to kind of push. And I just want to know, like, how do we know you'll push back on our behalf and just like speak back to these, because this is, you'll find yourselves in compromising positions in these sort of situations, and that's okay. And you have to kind of do that little bit of push and shove, as the man at the end said. And when you're in government, you have to negotiate, but you're still going to, these things, it's very easy to sit in a room and say that we will push back against, or we're in favour of banning and so on. But if you're in a situation where somebody has come to you as a lobby, are you able to kind of talk back on our behalf as TDs, as representatives from the area?
So I think the question is, how will you represent the voice here? The voice that is close to the loss of biodiversity, that sees windmills and other infrastructure on an industrial scale, and can see every day the changes in the habitats around and in the characteristics of the landscape, which to the people here is very important. But to the lobbyists, they have a different agenda. Am I representing you correctly? And, it's a bit, whose side are you on? Is that the question? Yes. And I have to give you the microphone.
My question was just to everyone on the panel. The last stat I seen was 20% of Leitrim is covered in forest right now, and that's obviously an issue people are bringing up here.
We're coming to that one next.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
Well, that was going to be my question. So,
It's the next one. Yeah. Any more comments?
I think it's worth remembering. We did have the big bog slide in Mountain Bog, and that was at a time when we didn't fully understand what the cause of that particular slide was. We had earlier slides elsewhere in the country, but it emerged that the slide there was that there's a kind of there's almost like a greasiness between the shale rock and the bog, and it's very, very volatile, and when it is disturbed, that greasiness breaks down and it allows the bog to actually slide off the shale. And if anybody was around when the Mountain bog slide occurred, it was like watching a river of lava, but cold lava, and it was almost unstoppable. And the amount of earthworks to prevent that bog slide from entering into Loch Allen, which was miles away, was phenomenal. And so we have to be very, very cautious about the type of terrain in which we are putting our wind farms. Now, the solution isn't necessarily all offshore, but one of the things that has, in my mind, been wrong with national policy is that there is a drive to drive the wind farms up to the tops of the mountains because that's where the wind speeds are. And we are insisting on wind speeds that are twice the wind speeds at which they are building wind farms in Germany and in Denmark. And the crazy thing about it is we're actually then pushing them up into the most volatile landscapes we have and the most pristine landscapes we have. And we really need to break away from this bidding to get the licenses to do wind farms. based on wind speeds.
Okay, I'll take 2 more comments. Thank you.
Leitrim County Council refused a wind farm for 2 wind turbines just outside Drumkeeran. And in the assessment, or the decision, one of the reasons was 55 landslides that they have recorded in a 5-kilometre zone around that site. And that was another upland site. And this is more by observation. It's about siting them. And that is, I know because Adrian there was able to tell me, in Perth in Scotland, they have them in the town. In Liverpool, they have them in the town.
Yeah.
They have them on roundabouts. So it's
Yeah.
like the spire being the silly bit of that.
Okay.
They have one in Dundalk.
Exactly.
In the
Yeah.
middle of the town in Dundalk.
Yes.
Where they don't have an impact.
Okay.
And offshore, whales don't have boats and
Okay.
seabirds don't have boats.
Okay.
That's the reason they're going
Okay,
into
I'll
the
take
sea.
1 more comment and then I'll come back to you, Nuala. Yeah.
Just everyone's made very good points here this evening about the unsustainability of these wind farm developments. And my major concern is that we're all involved to more or less to a small degree or large degree in tourism and trying to promote tourism in North Leitrim. Nuala's very much to the forefront of that. She encouraged me to join the Leitrim Tourism Network, and we've done huge promotion for tourism in North Leitrim. And here we have a policy of developing a pristine mountain into an industrial landscape. I want to know what TDs, if they're elected, are going to do to promise us that our children will be safe in the knowledge that there won't be another Shas, there won't be another landslide into one of our communities. And we're looking at them in 5 years' time saying, well, what if we listened to the people that are talking here tonight and adopted those policies into government and made sure that this doesn't happen into our future?
Thank you. I think the theme is very clear. You know, what I'm hearing is people saying that windmills, you know, when you see an image of a windmill, you think, oh, we're all doing our carbon job here. But what people are telling us is that they're seeing huge impacts from it. It's on an industrial scale. It has potential to cause huge disasters. There's evidence that we have now that we didn't have before, and this policy needs to be reevaluated. So, Nuala, I'm going to ask you to sort of state what question you would ask the people around the table here if they were elected. What would you ask for them to do?
Well, biodiversity is one of my bugbears. So I'm asking all of the candidates, what specific actions would you take to ensure that areas with sensitive biodiversity, such as Dua Mountain, are fully protected from industrial developments? Bearing in mind it's a National Heritage Area, leading down to Loch Melvin, which is a special area of conservation. So we're talking high nature value here.
Sorry? No. So what policies they would put in place?
What specific actions you would take?
Yeah, and also I hear very clearly from the questions as well is, what are you going to support? You know, policies that will support the local environment or policies that will support industrial scale infrastructure. So where will I start?
Huge lobbying from the industry.
Acknowledging the lobbying from the industry. Marion, I think I'll start with you and move this way.
Thank you very much. Well, I've had meetings with Save Dua Mountain Group and many other groups when I was in the European Parliament, from a place called Derrinturn up in Kildare to Yellow River in Offaly to Roscommon, and of course Derry Bryan. Most of you will know the story there, because again that was where the landslide was. And like many of you, I was on Shas Mountain and I saw literally the trees where they had moved and the damage it can do. It's my understanding, for what it's worth, that you cannot construct a wind farm on bog as of now, but all the points that have been made, and there's been so many really good positive points made here, and I do agree with them. I believe that there's an issue because we haven't had a government that has had the guts to bring in guidelines around this. I mean, when I was in Europe, the proposal was that for every 100 metres, there'd be 10 metres of a setback. So if you're looking then at 1,000 metres, it would be, if you're looking at 100 metres, it'd be a kilometre of a setback, or 200 metres, it would be 2 kilometres of a setback. And in truth, of course, that would mean most of the land in Ireland, you could not put wind farms there. And that's what I was told at the time. Nobody has mentioned one point here, and that's infrasound. That is sound that we as humans cannot hear, but other creatures can. But it really disturbs people's sleep and their sleeping patterns. And I have met with many people, I've done a lot of research on it, and to have a wind farm close to you or within a distance of 2, even 3 kilometres, not everybody will be affected, but some people are affected very badly. So I would have to say I fully oppose, to answer the question, the industrial wind farms that are proposed. And in fact, I remember having a row with Pat Rabbitte back many years ago when he was minister at the time, because he reckoned that if we built enough of them, we would actually be exporting our energy to the UK. Thankfully, that didn't happen. Do you know why it didn't happen? It didn't happen because the communities in those areas that I spoke about, where I attended meeting after meeting, said it will not happen. So industrial wind farming is an absolute no-no. Community projects for communities to get community aid. And finally, this idea that large industry can come in and promise, and I've seen it, there'll be 100,000 to a local club, to a football club, to another club. There'll be 20,000 to this club if we can build these wind farms. That has to be stopped, and we cannot allow that to happen because it is divide and conquer. Thanks.
Yeah, just a couple of things in relation to it. As far as I'm aware at the moment, for the blanket bog, basically the bog that you have on the top of a mountain, you're not allowed to plant it at the moment. That has changed. And that's where an awful lot of these landslides came from. That's where an awful lot of these problems were, because that bog was drained and you ended up with a situation where you had landslides and all kinds of problems with it. If you're going to put wind turbines on it, you're going to do the very same. You're going to put roadways through it, you're going to drain it, you're going to have all that. You also have a massive amount of concrete that has to go into the ground, down to the bedrock, in order to stabilise the wind turbine, which is going up a notorious height into the sky. So there's I suppose, a debate to be had as to the value. That when you take all the carbon that it takes to construct this thing, and then the amount of time that it's useful for, as to how much benefit it is, and that's a debate I think that needs to a lot more analysis. We also have to.
Have that debate if you're elected.
Of course, we'll have that debate. And just to say, and to the point about the lobbyists, one of the structures we have in the Oireachtas is we have the various committees. And normally what happens at the committees is when proposals comes up is that you bring in experts and you bring in various people. So a committee would hold a number of meetings with a number of different sectoral experts. Some of them would be perhaps people from universities that would have done huge amounts of research into this, written doctorates on it. Some of them would be lobby groups, various lobby, and they would all put their points of view to it, and the committee would come up with a report. And that report would, if you like, give some sense of analysis as to what you're trying to do. Now, it comes back to I thought of that when the mention was of lobbyists earlier on. Going back to the previous thing we talked about the gold mining, I actually asked the Environment Committee to do work on that whole area of gold mining and what's happening and where we're going in respect of that. Now, committees have a schedule of work which sometimes they're 6, 8, 10 months ahead before they get to it. So I hope that will come up, and I'll check with that in regard to the Environment Committee in the Dáil as soon as I can. When I'm re-elected.
Thanks, Martin. I would be very much, I suppose we know that we need to move towards renewable energy, but like offshore is the way that I would think it needs to go. I think it does make, I think we've learned from bog slides and from landslides, not just in Ireland but around the world, I suppose, that building, it's like building in swampland, that like not only is it an impact on biodiversity loss, which if we don't kind of become aware of that's our it's detrimental, I suppose. Our biodiversity loss is the greatest threat to humanity, is biodiversity loss, because we all have no food. But so I would be very much in favour of yes, and I'd imagine some planning laws could come in that if there is something like, if it is an SAC, if it's special area conservation, that there shouldn't be commercially built wind farms there, and you'd imagine it would make sense that some kind of planning laws could come in around that.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, no, I wouldn't be in favour of commercial wind farms anyway. And community energy is the way I would think it needs to go.
Yes, well, I was a witness to what occurred at the Dawn of Hope in 2020, yes.
The election, the government programme for government was written at the time.
At the time, yeah, and I mean, it was quite clear that it was an unsuitable location, and I was interested in what was said over here. My former planning officer, Kieran, in regard to the haste to the top of the mountain, to the pinnacle, that it may not be necessary. And questions then arise as to why are people doing that? Why are the companies doing that? Is it because that land can be acquired at smaller money? Negotiations can be...
It actually causes other problems, because one of the problems of going to the top of the mountain, you're actually going away from the grid.
Mm-hmm.
So you now have to put actually grid in. So
to feed it back, yeah.
It's all got to do with the bid for how much you're going to get for your electricity.
Yeah, no, I'm yeah.
Your electricity, and that will depend. You make more if you've got a higher wind speed, because you're producing more energy, and therefore you're getting a higher return.
A higher return, yeah.
That's what's driving it there.
Absolutely, but I do think that somewhere between convenient to where there's settlements or houses or whatever, between there and the top of the mountain, there might well be a place that, but companies would be reluctant to go there because it wouldn't be as lucrative for the reason that you've just outlined. So,
well, it works in Germany and it works in Denmark,
yeah.
On the lower land.
Well, we simply can't have it to persist on the top of the mountain, threatening the landscape and threatening all the wildlife, etc.
Yeah,
that's my view now.
Yeah. The question also is, there's a loss of biodiversity.
Absolutely.
What policies are you going to bring in? What changes will we see?
If I were in a position to contribute to policy making, I would be adamant that we could have no repeat of what occurred in those instances that provoked those landslides, because to witness it was simply horrific. Had it been to the rear of somebody's house, you could well imagine what would have occurred.
Can I say something now? Because you know what, you've all been great. You all came. My family farm is actually still covered in bog. Yeah. We got 20,000, which is a little bit of a piss off for the amount of land that was damaged, and we're going to pay a tax on it now as well. So you all did wonderful to come and get your pictures taken up at the Shas Mountain bog slide. But that, we are still living there. Nobody has come since, so they haven't. Nobody has mentioned it since. It's all forgotten about now because we've been paid off. And at the top of that mountain, there is now a beautiful road which can take, the beautiful historic bridge of the Dawn of Hope is under a big load of cement now. We've lost the bridge. It's sitting under cement. Nobody, oh yes, we've got a beautiful, large, big road to take down and up loads of wind turbines, or take up and down loads of commercial forestry. So you don't have a clue. Not a clue. Well, this is all nonsense you're talking.
No, well, can I say that?
I'm sorry, but I really cross listening to you talking about the Dawn of Hope bog slide, as if you know anything about it.
But I did witness it.
Sorry, can I just, I think you're hearing very clearly, from all the messages that they're not seeing the policies from government, am I correct?
The amount of environmental damage that came down in that bog was absolutely heartbreaking. We've lived there. My mum has lived there all her life. She's 83 years of age, and she is heartbroken to look at it.
Okay. Sorry, I have two people who... Can I just stop for a second? Okay, I'm going to continue, but I'd ask you not to be telling me, that you think it's terrible and all the rest. I want to hear what you're going to do about it. Sort of...
Well, I did say with respect,
yes.
that if I were in a position that
I
would contribute to policy that would not allow a reoccurrence of that.
You certainly did, and I'm not... if you give me 2 seconds, give me 2 seconds. I'm just trying to keep a bit of order here. So can I ask you what your comment is?
It's just to follow on what Teresa has said here, because I live quite close to it.
Yes.
And we asked, I was on the task force that was set up after the landslide, and we asked Minister Roderick O'Gorman to continue with the task force. But once the roads were done and the money was given to the council to do that, that was the end of the task force. And it wasn't the work of the task force wasn't completed. We wanted to find out why it happened and what we could do to prevent it from happening again, and what was going to be done about the amount of bog that's still there on the land. And the task force was abandoned.
Okay. Now, I can hear very clearly, sort of the issues, but I'm very conscious of time as well. No, I'm not giving this to anyone.
That's all right.
No, but I can ask for your comment.
The reason why it happened, I have a fair idea, because I was very involved at the time through the farm organisation, the IFA. Okay, there had been 3 months of entirely dry weather.
Yes.
Followed by
heavy rain.
What would be normally 6 to 8 times. That happened at 2 a.m. that morning and at 6 a.m. Okay, and it slid off. We know that, and it's miraculous that nobody lost their lives. The forest appeared. My first impression was that it was planted 12, 15 years. It was, I believe, 25 years planted. Therefore, it's not even good land to put the...
That's coming up in the next subject. It's coming up in the next subject. Sorry, now, I have to move ahead, but I think you can hear very strongly, that this is an issue that is very much at the heart of the community. I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to continue. Fláithín.
Thank you, Madeleine. Well, Green Party policy has always been to try and support community wind farms and having the right wind turbine in the right place. And they are not windmills, you're right, Adrian, they're wind turbines and they're massive. And I'm living in the shadow of them myself, and I see the destruction that they are doing. But I also have looked into it to see what is the carbon footprint of them. And after about 6 years, they actually become, they become not carbon neutral, but they start moving towards that. They start undoing the thing. But forget about that for a minute. If we look around Leitrim, like before the Dome Mountain and everything, we look around Leitrim, it was like we have the forests, we have the wind turbines, and there's like, you could have wind turbines, as somebody already said, like Sligo, the ATU has a small one thing. We should have wind turbines in every small town, in everywhere there should be. So we need to stop using Leitrim as the place to use our land. And remember, it's somebody's land that these are being put on, and they're making good money from them being put on that land as well.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, look, I'll come at it from a different angle, and I'm not an expert on these issues a lot of times, I suppose, but I do take advice from the experts, from planners, as you were, Kieran, from the Department of Environment, and to me there's a very, very strong influence since 2007 in the Department of Environment, and that's a very, very good thing. Notwithstanding some maybe thinking differently, but the one thing I would say is that as a TD, I do not get lobbied too often at all by wind farms or anything like that. I don't know that the local authority members get lobbied as much, but I don't. And as a minister, when I was a minister in the Department of Health, there are very, very strict regulations in the department. It's not like the United Kingdom, I can tell you that for certain, or it's not like the United States.
Can I ask you to...
Can I just finish? Yeah. It's like the United States. All I just say, when I was a minister, I had a diary secretary, and one day I ended up in Bustles Hotel to meet somebody, and one man beside me said he wanted to talk about herbal cannabis, and I said, I cannot talk to you about that because it's not minute in the diary. And that is how serious that we are regulated. And I'm not sure, is every other sector regulated as much as politicians? I just want to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. No. Okay, gentlemen.
Thank you. Well, I think it's very clear from the previous speakers and the audience here tonight that definitely that proposal was shot down. I think just like Leitrim County Council refused it. I think that was a good thing that it did, because I have seen damage done by wind farms, and I've seen slippages on mountains and lands destroyed. And in fact, I've seen 2 houses wiped out of it with a landslide. I understand Leitrim has capacity of 90 megawatts of power at the moment, and that has to be increased in 2030 to 170. That could be done, I believe, could be done with solar energy and other ways, and that could be privately owned, and people could get an income from producing that extra 80 megawatts that's going to be needed by 2030. That's what I would be suggesting. Thank you.
Again, very interesting to listen to it. Absolutely, inappropriate areas are just a no-go. It's just absolutely crazy. Wind farms, if we are to use them, should be only put in appropriate areas. It's very interesting to listen to Kieran and the fact that we don't have to go up so high. I know there's an environmental impact on tidal, offshore. Everything, sadly, will have or can have an environmental effect. It's how that's minimised, in my opinion. I saw a report that was put together by the Sligo Chamber of Commerce, which was based on renewable energies of utilising our northwest shoreline, and that actually got nearly a practically brick wall against it, because even if they got to do any of the things they wanted to advance, they weren't going to be given connection to our national grid. So there's a government that's very interested in environmental and renewable energies. I believe we have to listen and hear the experts when they tell us something. It's all right saying that we bring in experts into this committee and that committee, and we hear what they say, but are you listening? Do you really hear what they're saying? People aren't listening. In answer to the question, I believe they should only be put in appropriate areas. And in answer to your question up there about lobbyists and how do you stop people changing their opinions when they go to Dáil, there's a very easy solution to that problem. It's stop electing people who are willing to only represent us up to a point.
Thank you. In conclusion with that, I'd say I got the feeling very strongly from you, the members of the audience, that the loss of biodiversity, the installation of industrial type installations, whether you have experts or not, the local knowledge is the expertise. And the expertise is telling you here tonight that the loss of biodiversity is something that's really close to your hearts, and any infrastructure that would lead to that is very close to their hearts. So if elected, hopefully you carry that message with you.